I want to lay something down, then I want to pick it back up. When we can get to a place in our life when we can lay down what's hindering us, stopping the move of God in our life, when we can leave it there, God's getting ready to use us. God's getting ready to work in our life when we can lay it down. We got to get rid of the fear. I think he even sang about fear a while ago. Lay it down. Let's walk away. Let's be who God has called us to be. I love that. I love that God does things in our life, completely circle and come right back to where we quit at. No, God didn't quit using them. They just quit singing. They laid some stuff down, but they picked it back up in the use of God. I love who we are. I love being a church that's not ashamed, not afraid to step out and do something different for God. To lift Him up, to give Him praises. Gabe, come on, bring us a word.
How many of you came here tonight to have a blessing? How many of you came here tonight to have a relationship? I preach a message sometimes, Brother Steve, that we get wrapped up in the blessing when it's really all about the relationship. Amen? Because without the relationship with God, there'll be no blessings. Amen? Tonight I want to talk about something that God gave me a long time ago for this church. I shared it with Steve probably about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And it's about vision. It's about what you see or how you see things or how you perceive things. Whenever we was travel nurses, me and my wife, we worked at a lot of hospitals. Probably about 7 different hospitals that we went to, and we probably worked for about 10 over our nursing career. And Brother Steve, whenever I started thinking about this sermon, God began to show me one thing that was in common with all of them. You might think, well, hospital's a hospital. No, it's not. Hospitals can be run different. The ICU units can be ran totally different. They could be what we call team nursing, or they could be just individual nursing. But one thing that I noticed, Sherry, about all the different hospitals, every time that we went to a new hospital, the first thing that they would do is they would take us, before they would show us anything in the hospital, before we understood where we was going to be working or who we was going to be working with, they would take us and they would set us down in a room, and they'd bring a piece of paper and they'd set it right in front of us. And on that piece of paper was what we call a vision statement. And after they would show us that, they would want us to read it, and after they would show us that, they would pull out another sheet of paper. Every hospital that we worked at did this. And then they'd set it down in front of us. So we had the vision statement, and the one that they set down in front of us was the mission statement. So God began to show me that, and you know what? They wanted us to realize, Sherry, that they had a purpose for us. They wanted us to see that they wanted their hospital to be at a certain point at this level, and in order for me to work at a caliber that would help get them there, I had to first know what the vision was. If you've got a pen and paper, write this down. You will never, ever, absolutely never have a mission without a vision first. I know that there's people that's walking around here and they think that they own this big mission, but they ain't got no vision whatsoever, sir. They don't know where they're going. You will absolutely never, ever have a mission without first having a vision. And you can jot this down too. You will never have a vision complete unless there's a change. Let's go to the book of Proverbs. Chapter 29, verse 18. Mercy. You ain't got to turn around, just got it up on the screen. I would say that I probably heard sermons about visions, Brother Jimmy, all my life. And guess what verse that they'll use? This one. I ain't going to be any different. But I want to give it to you a little bit differently because I see it different as of late. It says, where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. I always had trouble with that. You know, whenever I would sit back and I would read that, where there's no vision, the people perish, I thought, well, they're just going to die. That's what that means, perish, die. And then also, Brother Jimmy, had trouble with the latter part of that verse where it says, he that keepeth the law, happy is he. And I sit back and I would sit back and think, what does that part have anything to do with the first part? Until I started looking about what that word perish meant in the different translations. Y'all stay with me here, okay? I got to reading about what that word perish meant in the Hebrew and all them different translations. And it did not mean what I thought it meant. It did not mean about dying. It did not mean about getting hurt or having harm come to you. It meant to be unrestrained. Where there is no vision, the people are unrestrained. But he that keepeth the law, what is the law? The law is restraint. You see, the law keeps us going the way we're supposed to go. The law keeps us, you know, I sit back and always wondered, why did Paul say, I press towards the mark of the prize of the high calling? He didn't say I was trying to find it. Do you hear what I'm saying? He didn't say I was wandering here and there. He said I pressed towards it. He knew where it was. But you know what? How many Christians here today know where the mark is? You've heard of it, but do you know where the mark is? Do you know how to get to it? A lot of us is running around here unrestrained, Sherry. We're wanderers. We're wandering aimlessly. We don't know where to go. Where you at, Robert? Come up here. You picked on me this morning. I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Come on, son. Come on. Come here, Zach. We got two fine fellas here. They're healthy. They both got walks of life that they're going to walk, and I'm going to give two of them a specific word. Listen to me, okay? If you will shake the right hand of everybody in this row and then proceed to walk over to my wife, you will get $20. Don't leave you $20, dude. All right, Robert, you ready? You like that $20? Well, I'm going to tell you this, okay? There is another $20 in here somewhere. Go find it. Do you see what I'm trying to show you here? I gave one direction. I gave one direction, and he walked down here, and it was just simple. And he walked over to my wife, and he got the $20. Now, you sit here and watch Robert. You see, he was restrained to what I was telling him. That was my money. That was my money. And I had a specific direction in order for him to get it. The other one, he's wandering, unrestrained. He don't know where it's at. He's searching. He's looking. He's turning up probably every pew in here looking, trying to find it, and he can't find it. Here's the sad part. The apostle said that we are to walk circumspectly, redeeming the time that God has given us. So we just got a little bit of time. You know what? The lights is going to go off in this place, and Robert's going to walk out of here, and he ain't going to have $20 to his name. Why? Because he had no direction. He's walking unrestrained. This word right here, this is my direction. Ooh, glory. Aaron, with any vision that we're going to have, now listen to me. There's 3 different kinds of sight that we can have. And I want you to write these down tonight if you write. The first one is foresight. The second one is insight. And the third one is hindsight. How many of you know what foresight is? I would dare to say that there's not one person in here down through your life that has not had foresight about something. Just like my wife. She started dating me and she looked down the road and thought, he's an awesome man. He is an awesome, awesome man. And I'm going to marry that guy. So she asked me and I said, yeah. Well, you say, man, they got to be some kind of spiritual. Whoa. For me to have this foresight, no. Mm-mm. Here's the problem, Brother Brady. There are so many of us in here today that looks out and sees so many problems. But here's what we say. Pastor Steve will take care of that. I would say that about everybody in here has seen a need, that probably even right here in this church, we have seen the need. We have seen it out there, sir. We look down the road and see that there's a problem, but you know what? We think it's for everybody else to fix, and we never fix it ourselves. I know I've done that. Let me ask you a question tonight. Why can't it be you? There is people that come to church and the vision that they have. I wanted to say this too. Whenever we worked at these hospitals, they didn't just put that paper in front of us just to look at it. They wanted us to know it. To the point, Sandy, that you would be working, I'd be taking care of a patient, and I would have a manager walk into the room, interrupt me, and take me out the door and say, what is our vision statement? They meant business. They wanted me to know. How many of us know what the vision is of this church? We say, I ain't got no vision. Well, you know what? If you ain't got no vision, you know who you need to go talk to? You need to go talk to your pastor, because the vision that he has should be yours. What do you mean it should be mine? Just like whenever God called Moses to lead his people out, whenever God took his life, there was somebody that stood up and took his place by the name of Joshua. It's the same thing. Whenever Paul went, who stepped up? Timothy. You see a problem. You see a work out there. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I can do that. I'm a child of God, and the Bible tells me that He's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. Why can't it be me? If He can take somebody like David and anoint him and slay a giant, slay the bear, slay the lion, why can't He take me and use me? Hey. Foresight. The act of looking forward. Seeing where you are now and looking into the future, knowing where you want to be then. I just graduated. Sister Ruth, you remember me in high school? I was terrible. I graduated with a 2.2. Barely a C average. Got out. Went and me and my wife traveled full-time singing for a while. Ended up liking her. Ended up taking her and dating her, and we ended up getting married, and we sat there and struggled and struggled and struggled. These two right here, they had it right. This boy right here came out of high school and he went and became an electrician. This sister right here came out of high school and she went to college and she became a social worker. Me, I went and I was delivering flowers. We'd go out with them. They'd have money, we wouldn't. There came a day, Sabrina, that I looked down the road and I seen that where my life was going, I didn't want it to be that way. I seen that I wanted to have a change. I seen that I wanted to seek God. You know what I seek? I had seeked to be a full-time minister. I went to every church in this country, preaching my little heart out, singing my little heart out. But you know what? That is not where God wanted me to be. You see, what we see ain't right. It's just like whenever Martha and Mary looked down the road and they seen that their brother Lazarus was sick, they had foreknowledge. They looked down and they had foreseen that if Jesus did not come, he was going to die. So they sent out a servant to go get him. And he tarried. And he tarried. And after 4 days, he looked at his disciples and he said, Lazarus is asleep. I must go and wake him. They had foreseen that if he didn't get there, he was not going to make it. Whenever he died, they thought that was it. Whenever Jesus finally got there, they went to him. They said, had you been here, our brother would not have died. And he said, Lazarus is asleep. He shall rise up. And they said, Lord, we understand that he's going to rise up in the last days. You see, this is where insight comes in. They thought that he was gone, Charlie. But here he come, and he looked at Martha, and he said, I am the resurrection and the life. And it said that he went and said, take the stone away. And he began to call his name, Sherry. Lazarus, come forth. You see, their foresight was worldly, but we serve a God. Woo! That whenever they seen their brother come out of that tomb, they had insight that this was no normal man. This was the Son of the living God. Woo! Hey. We tend, a lot of times, to live in hindsight. What do you mean? You a 4-time state champion? 3. This girl right here is a 3-time state cheerleading champion of the state of West Virginia. If you have no future vision and you have no foresight, and you don't get no insight, Sherry, you will always live in the past. Have you ever met people like that? They always live in the past. Me and Steve is sitting there talking about future things of the church, and then Marcia comes up, and you know what she has to add? I'm a 3-time state champion. You walk over here, this is a different day. You're talking to Kathy and Kurt, and we're talking about how we're going to do things down the road in the church. Here comes Marcia, or here comes Lorena, and Lorena says, well, you know what, I'm a 4-time state champion. They can't get past the past. That's all that they got to look forward to. They ain't got no vision out there, sir. They're not seeing what God wants them to do. Hey. Hindsight. Don't write it off. It's good. You're not supposed to stay there. Hindsight is there, sir, that I can look back and I can see how things went and understand that if I do it this way again, I'm going to fall again. There's people that come to church, listen to me, and their vision every week with God is from Sunday to Sunday. Oh, this is for somebody here. Every Sunday they come back and their vision ends right here. They get up and their vision starts over again. Well, I'm going to go to church Sunday. I'm going to get up there and Regina and that praise team is going to get up and bless me. And I'm going to get my blessing. I'm going to stand up and hold my hands up. I'm going to give a hoorah. And I'm going to do all this. And then after Steve finally dismisses in prayer, I'm going to go back home. And you know, it's just a repeated cycle. You're just having a vision from Sunday to Sunday. Let me tell you right now, if you're going to have a vision for God, whenever He gives you insight, you have got to step outside of the box that you are stepping in. You have stayed there from Sunday to Sunday for years, and you ain't got it yet. You have got to step out of the box. Well, God's calling me to preach. Well, step out of the box. God's calling me to sing. Step outside of the box. Step out. I went to work in a little guard shack. And it was there, Brother Beatty, that God gave me a vision. God showed me I was going to preach His gospel. I would sit there and I'd study and I'd study. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know where to go. And finally I went to a man's house that had been preaching for a long time. And I'd sit there and I thought, this man will help me. And I went there and I'll never forget. There's just some things that happen to you that you'll never forget. And I remember that they lived in a little mobile home trailer. And I remember I was there whenever he got home from work. He worked night shift. And I sat down and I said, Steve, God has called me to preach the gospel, but I don't know what to do. He set me down. He took me to the parable of the sower and the seed. And I kid you not, that man rolled out my sermon for me. You know what, Brother Brady? If I would have just sat there in my seat and hadn't asked for help, if I hadn't sought help, if I hadn't stepped out of my comfort box, if I hadn't went seeking for somebody to give me a hand, I'm telling you I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be standing here preaching His gospel. Don't repeat your every Sunday vision, Sherry. It's time. There's people out here dying and going to a living hell. They need you. You don't know what to do, Brother Brady, until you have a vision, brother. Until you recognize and foresee that there's a problem. Then you'll get your mission. Whenever you turn over to God and say, God, I am yours. I am yours. Take me. Show me. Here's where Brother Jimmy comes in. We are repeat offenders. In Revival of the Bones, out of all the great preaching that took place, there was one line that I'll never forget as long as I lived. He was up there preaching, and there was cables and cords going everywhere. And as he was preaching, he said, you see this cord right here? He said, if you keep tripping over it and tripping over it time and time again, he said, my God, for the love of Jesus, move the cord. This is what hindsight will tell you. That if you keep falling in the same place, if you're not working for God or God ain't using you, you're doing a repeat cycle. You're not redeeming the time that God given you. Understand? You got this big old long rope, Sherry, that goes completely from here outside the church. It all looks like rope. But on the end of this rope right here, there's a blacked out spot about that big. Brother Brady, what you see in this rope right here is where you're at right now. Do you understand? What you do in the time that God has given you, what you do in the time that God has given you will determine what will happen in the rest of the rope. Do you understand? What I do now, Sherry, will determine where I'll be at in heaven. What I do now will determine where I'll go. I can remember whenever I was growing up, my grandfather would look at me if I said something that wasn't right. He'd tell me, he said, "You're talking out the back of your head." Anybody ever heard somebody say that to you? A lot of the old timers would say that if you wasn't making sense of what you're saying, they'd say you're talking out the back of your head or you're talking out the side of your head, whichever one. I have come to learn, Brother Jimmy, that I know I also talk out of the back of my head, but a lot of times I see out of the back of my head. I'm not seeing what's in front of me. I'm not seeing what God has wanted. I want to be prayed up. I want to be ready. I want to know what He wants to do with me. Hey. That revival down there that we had, 41 people found the Lord. It was nothing to me. I was sitting in a nursing office, Sherry, and God showed me that something was coming. I said, "All right, God, here I am. Take me, use me." I walked literally 50 feet over into an office, and Brother Ray Church was in there. We was all laughing and having a good time, and we was sitting out talking to Brother Ray, and all of a sudden he got that big hoot-eye look in his face, right in front of everybody, and he said, "God has called you to do something. You better be going and doing it." Three days later, Brother Rick May came to me and said, "I want you to preach a revival for me." I thought, all right, here we go. Here we go, baby. This is it. In my mind, I'm sitting there thinking, all these people are going to get saved. God's going to let me know that something big's coming. I get up there and preach that revival. They had a few people, a handful of people got saved. And on about the last night, Brother Joe Copley came to me and said, "There's going to be a revival. And you're going to have a big part in it." Do you see what God was doing to me? He gave me foresight, church, to know that something was coming. He wanted to confirm that I understood that something was coming when Brother Ray talked to me. Whenever I was at Brother Rick's preaching that revival and Joe said there was a revival, I knew then what it was. There was a revival coming. For 2 years, I went around to different churches preaching about that revival, saying God's going to do something miraculous. God's going to do something great. You better get ready. You know what? I went to some pastors and talked to them, and they turned their back on me. They wouldn't hear a word that I had to say. You see, sure, they had no vision. They didn't know. Do you understand? If you ain't got no vision, go to somebody that does and say, "I want to help. I want to help you. I want to take your vision and make it my own," because you know why? I called. Actually, I texted him. I didn't even know who this man was. My wife started going to his church. And she'd come home and she'd say, "Gosh, that Jimmy, he can preach. That Jimmy, he's so wonderful. That Jimmy, hey, listen. That Jimmy was about one of the best men I've ever heard preach the gospel." I was sitting there thinking, who's this Jimmy? I was sitting on my lawnmower one day, had my phone, had my earphones in. I was listening to this man called Jimmy. I remember my wife came to me and said, "What do you listen to?" A man by the name of Jimbo, something like that. Right then and there, God put in my heart to send that man a text. I didn't even know. And say, we're going to get acquainted real soon. God's bringing something to our community, and you're going to be a part of it. And I will never forget, he said, "Brother, I am ready." He didn't question me. He didn't say, "Well, how big of a crowd's going to be there? How many people's going to be there to see me?" No. 2 years went by. 2 years. And I took a screenshot and I sent it back to him. He said, "Brother, I'm ready. We're going to do that video." Some of the people I wanted to be in it didn't want to be in it. I called that man one day. I said, "Do you want to be in this video?" He didn't ask me a single word, sir. He said, "Yes." I came to my pastor and I said, "Something big's coming." He was like, "Okay, get ready." Do you understand what I'm saying? They took my vision that God gave me. They took the vision that God had gave me and made it their own. They became Joshua's. If you sit back and think, brother, that you ain't got nothing to do, go find somebody that is. Find somebody that God has spoken to and say, "How can I help you?" Are we our brother's keeper? We formed a little thing, Sherry, on Facebook called the God Squad. And I tagged certain people in that. Not only did God show me the vision 2 years ago, but whenever they begin to get on there, and you had 4 people saying, "I went to church tonight, and what the preacher preached was Ezekiel chapter 37, that dead bones can come alive." He began to give them insight, Sherry. They not only had foresight, they began to see exactly what I had seen, what God had showed me. In closing, now I'm going to turn it over to the pastor. Look at your life tonight and say, "God, what am I doing?" I heard my wife speak not too long ago that whenever God came walking through the garden and He asked Adam, "Where art thou?" He was not asking Adam that because he didn't know. He knew where Adam was. He wanted Adam to ask and say, "I'm right here." If you do not have a vision beyond next Sunday, I pray that tonight you're going to find it. That tonight you're going to know somebody in this church that God is working through, that God is using, and you're going to go to them and you're going to say, "I want to help. I want to be a part of your vision. I want to be a part." I'm tired of getting in a conversation and just saying this. I'm a 3-time state cheerleading champion. Us 4 and Brother Steve, we traveled everywhere and we sung and we preached and we made all these future things. We was looking at in the future and we was seeing people that needed our services that God had given us, our talents, and we was going and going and we was seeing people get saved. But you know what? Up until this year,
We hadn't been singing in a long time or preaching together, but up to this year, the only thing that I could talk about whenever I get with him was things of the past. Whenever God brought me here, immediately, we started looking at things in the future again. One of these days, Brother Jimmy, one of these days we're going to sit down together. And you know what? We're going to sit down. We're going to say, you remember that revival, the Bones revival? I don't know about you all here tonight, but I want to make new memories. I want to make new memories. I want to get with my pastor and I want to say, I want to be used. I want you to use me. I want you to tell me everything. I want to know. I want to know the direction that you're wanting to go. I want to be there. I want to help you. I want to help. If your vision just goes from Sunday to Sunday. If you can't see past the pew that's in front of you, or here to the right to your left, if you always look at whenever Moses, and I'm going to close right here, whenever Moses brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, anytime they start to get hungry, anytime they start to get worried, they would immediately say, we should have stayed back there. At least we was getting fed. They was beating the life out of us, but at least we was getting fed. I want to leave this with you tonight. You will never reach the promised land if you're always looking back at Egypt. We need to be looking forward. We need to go to our pastor and say, I want to be used. I see a need. I see a need. And I want to be used some way. Amen. Amen. Pastor.